the Dalit Christian woman who was the first heroine for the first film in Malayalam, Vigathakumaran, which was made and released by J.C. Daniel in 1928 in Trivandrum. This lecture series in our memorial will surely help us pay our tribute to this pioneering woman who came forward to act in cinema at a time when untouchable communities could not even walk on the road and other public spaces. This is even more important in the context of Dalit groups struggling to gain recognition for Rosi in Kerala, and in the further context of the Chief Minister of Kerala promising to install an award in her name and going back on his word about it. However, we must also remember that Rosi's pioneering step was met with instant violence from Nair caste lords on the very first day on which her film was released, as you saw in the documentary also. Men from the upper caste Nair community tore the screen and broke up the show, unable to bear the sight of a Dalit woman in the role of a Nair woman acting out scenes with another man. After this, they started attacking Rosi. J.C. Daniel, who made the film, tried to get her protection from the king himself, but the Nair landlords came in large numbers and burned down her hut and chased her out of the village. She was forced to run away from Kerala, never to return to the field of cinema. The film Vigathakumaran itself was shelved, and J.C. Daniel, its lower caste Nada Christian filmmaker, who was trying to recreate himself as a Nair through his film, was thwarted in his move, and he too had to leave the film field, incurring huge losses and plunging into poverty. Rosi, it is said, made a new life afterwards, after she got married to an upper caste lorry driver, and it is said that she spent the rest of her life working in a towel factory. Other accounts also tell us that she committed suicide while trying to escape the Nairs. Given this history, it is really significant that we are remembering this woman who was violently denied entry into the public sphere of Kerala. Today, I hope we recognize the magnitude of the violence meted out to her, which attempted not only to drive her out of Kerala and its public sphere, but also out of its own social and cinematic history itself. We must also refuse the mainstream method of seeing all this as an aspect of a pre-modern past and look around and recognize and remember the violence against Dalit women and women from other marginalized communities, which is still a reality of contemporary Kerala, both in its culture and in its cinema, in spite of all its claims to development and progress. We must also remember that we are able to do this only because of the efforts of Dalit intellectuals like Kunnam Mani, whom you saw without the subtitles, the first person who spoke, who pursued the case of P.K. Rosi, going after the sources and even finding and interviewing J.C. Daniel to get information about her, and by speaking to Daniel, who was then living away from the public eye in utter poverty. Though today more people know about other mainstream intellectuals like Chelangad Gopalakrishnan, who has written the history of J.C. Daniel, and Hinu Abraham, who wrote a book on Rosi, it was the efforts of Kunnam Mani and Dalit groups associated with him that retrieved and brought back Rosi from where she was left to be forgotten forever and ever. It is because of such intellectuals and activists that the history of Malayalam cinema was written in the 70s. Because till their work surfaced, Malayalam cinema history started with Martanda Varma, a film that used upper caste Tamil heroines in 1933 and could get away with it, and which is based on the glorious times of the powerful Travancore king Martanda Varma, who was recirculated into Kerala culture to support the growth of Malayali Nair nationalism. Nobody knew about Vigathakumaran, though it was just only 3 or 4 years before this Martanda Varma was made that Vigathakumaran was there. So we can't say that it was accident, it was deliberate, that deliberately this movie, nobody came to know about this. The first and only film in which Rosi had acted just a few years ago. Rosi was unheard of, and so was J.C. Daniel, who sold everything he had to make the film. In a way, the Nairs not only succeeded in putting an end to the career of both the Dalit woman Rosi and the lower caste man Daniel, but they were also able to do away with the history of this film, and this helped them install Martanda Varma, a film about a Travancore king, in its place as the first film of Malayalam cinema. However, the Dalit research changed everything. Vigathakumaran, Daniel and Rosi was written back into the history of cinema, and this is an amazing feat considering that the film reel was completely destroyed by then and there was nothing that remained in print about the cinema. So in remembering P.K. Rossi and having a lecture as a memorial for her, we are paying tribute to this precious Dalit scholarship and also standing in solidarity with the numerous Dalit groups who have worked hard to keep her memory alive for a very long time. Here we must also remember the P.K. Rossi Smaraka Committee in Kerala under Dalit, which is a Dalit group under E.P. Karthikeyan, which conducted a P.K. Rossi Memory Lecture in November 2012 last year, which was delivered by the prominent Dalit intellectual and film critic K.K. Baburaj. In this lecture, Baburaj spoke about the subaltern woman, especially the Dalit woman who was denied entry into the public sphere, and he also talked about the progressive nature of Malayali, the so-called progressive Malayali discourses which actually helped to make this come into force. Secondly, it is important that we are having this memorial lecture because it is a way in which we are able to insert the question of caste and gender into the Malayalam film viewing and festival circuit, which is always kept away from engaging with such issues. In fact, be it in films, film festivals, in academic discussions or in journalistic accounts, issues of caste and gender are systematically avoided both in Kerala and outside. So I hope that this space will be used to think about these issues and to keep alive a discussion on it, which would also be the best way to keep alive P.K. Rossi's memory. I really hope this space is not taken away from us and that in the coming years a Dalit woman or a Dalit Christian would come here to do this lecture instead of Dalit men and OBC women like me. And I also hope other lower caste women and Muslim women from all castes and regions in Kerala will be able to come here to talk about their own specific engagement with cinema. For the time being, I will try to do some justice to this space from within the limitations of my own lower caste OBC location. I have titled my lecture as Locating Rossi, Can a Dalit Woman Play an Iron Role in Malayalam Cinema? This is to challenge the sickening way in which P.K. Rossi and the violence that she had to face and live with is being discussed in the current Malayalam scene, especially after the release of the film Celluloid by the director Kamal, who hides his Muslim identity and name Kamaluddin Muhammad Majid within the short form of Kamal. All the present discussions about P.K. Rossi takes her out from history as some kind of a museum piece and displays the story of how she was violently attacked by the upper caste as a sign of a gory and violent casteist past. This is in direct contrast to the way in which Dalit groups commemorate Rossi. Mainstream discourses, on the other hand, enhance the progressiveness and castelessness of their present with this new and attractive museum piece called P.K. Rossi. For example, the documentary which you just saw talks about the Jadi, something called Jadi Medavitham Nilaninna Kalaghatam. That is a time when caste domination prevailed. That is age dominated by caste. This is surely a way to talk about the present as being casteless and situate the violence that happened to Rossi as something belonging to an era which is gone. Such a narrative only works to add to Kerala's claim to progressiveness and enhances the present as being completely devoid of such caste violences and such attempts to oust women from both cinema and other public spaces in Kerala. However, only if only we open our eyes and look around, we can surely see that this is so untrue. Take for example the case of Chitralekha, which didn't happen in 1930, but 75 years later, that is in 2005. She was a Dalit woman who wanted to drive an auto rickshaw, but who was similarly harassed by OBC men belonging to the trade union of the CPM. They burned her auto, which was her sole livelihood, and just like Rossi, Chitralekha was also driven out of a village and had to live outside it in another village in a rented place in great secrecy, afraid of being killed or hurt, and she had to struggle for a long time before getting back to her village and driving her auto again. Even now, Chitralekha has constant clashes with the CITU men in her village, and for her every day is a struggle, with none of those who attacked her and burned her auto getting punished because the legal case which she is still fighting is getting dragged on and on. In Kannur, there are many other Dalit Christian, OBC and Muslim women whose autos were similarly burned, who committed suicide and who have stopped driving autos after being attacked. I'm speaking of this because some of us studied this area a few years ago, and I'm also from Kannur, that area. But in every field, in every sphere, you will hear many such stories of discrimination, violence, trauma, and abuse. Living in such a Kerala, where even today we have not been able to install basic dignity to Dalit Adivasi women, to provide any legitimacy or space to Muslim women in the public sphere, and to stop the economic and sexual exploitation of Bahujan women, it is really maddening to hear about P.K. Rossi without any attempt to draw parallels to the contemporary. In fact, the very fact that the mainstream is evoking this history and trying to preserve it through filmmakers like Kamal makes it almost impossible to talk of the contemporary caste situation with regard to P.K. Rossi, which is what Dalit groups have always tried to do. Because when this mainstream preservation of film history project is set in motion, immediately we are asked to deal in the process of preserving or writing history from politics and to stop making the connection between people like Rossi and Chitralekha and to allow it a pure, insulated intellectual space. All this coming from an upper caste common sense which deliberately argues that the writing and preservation of history is an innocent and a political act, which we know is not true and which is nothing but a way of circulating its own politics, something that is clear to anyone who cares to see. In Kerala, this is a time when the casteist film industry is being critically attacked and resisted. And this is not done by mainstream magazines like Madhrubhumi or Malayalam or mainstream intellectuals like C.S. Venkateswaran who are happy getting state awards and going to fully upper caste film conferences. This is being done by fringe groups and blogs and online magazines and Facebook status messages and from various Dalit Bahujan Muslim locations. This critique has grown so loud that recently a director, Lal Jose, even said something like he will go to court against some kind of unfair review that had come on Facebook or something to that effect. It is at this time that the glorious reinstallation of Vigathakumaran is happening in Kerala through the film Celluloid, and everyone is suddenly speaking about those bad times of Malayalam cinema when and of Rosie and what happened to her more than half a century years removed from us, when caste violence was huge and Dalit women could not even appear in a movie. What is this but just a way of trying to pull a cover on all contemporary issues of caste and violence regarding cinema and culture by pointing to the distance and making us look away from the present. In fact, from the words of Dalit intellectuals who have seen this film already in Delhi, tomorrow it comes today I think, and are keenly critiquing it on Facebook, one can clearly understand the caste hegemony at work in the making of this film. As Ajit Kumar, intellectual musician, writer and documentary filmmaker, writes about how, this is what he writes about the message that this problematic messages that this film puts forward. According to him, this film tells us that caste existed then and now it is not there in Malayalam cinema. Caste is a problem of some Nair Madambis or Nair feudal lords and not a problem of any particular social structure. Once the Nairs became modernized, all this vanished. Earlier Nairs, because of the special circumstance, could use Dalits to play Nairs. Now for the dark-skinned heroine, we can bring in a fair non-Dalit and paint her black as it was done in this film. Similarly, Rupesh Kumar, another Dalit intellectual, is also fuming after seeing the film. If in 1930 a Dalit Christian woman had to face attacks from caste Hindus and had to run away to Tamil Nadu, today the film Celluloid is bringing her back to the screen and killing her again. This is what he writes. This Rupesh feels is because the film, which is supposed to be based on a novel on Rosie called Lost Heroine by Vinu Abraham, completely forgets to highlight Rosie and instead gives all the space to J.C. Daniel and Prithvi Raj as J.C. Daniel. In contrast, Rosie is portrayed as a woman without any mind of her own and as someone who is only capable of showing docility to Savarnas, to the system of untouchability and run away after being defeated. It is in this context that one feels forced to ask the question, is Kerala so different from 100 years ago? And can a Dalit woman play a Nair role in Malayalam cinema now? For this, I think we have to closely look at the caste and gender structures of Malayalam cinema and examine it to see the way in which Dalit women have been represented in them and how they have engaged with this industry, which is now claiming a glorious and progressive past in contrast to the violent Vigathakumarans and lost heroines of yesteryears. However, before going there, I would like to briefly highlight two aspects of P.K. Rosie and her reception in Kerala, which clearly shows that even her reception and reinstallation by mainstream, that is by magazines, novels, academic works, etc., is marked by her caste gender status as a Dalit woman. As we have already seen, Rosie was first introduced to Malayali audience due to the research work done by Dalit activist and historian Kundampuram Mani. Mani struggled with others intellectuals also to make this history visible, and it took him many years to actually get the names of Vigatha Kumaran and J.C. Daniel into the history of Malayalam cinema. Once its research was known, the first articles and write-up about Rosie started coming out. The first brief article in Film Magazine about her described her as a Pullu Kachavadatari or the grass seller. Adi Nayaga Tiruviratte Pullu Kachavadatari. That was the title. The first heroine is a grass seller from Trivandrum. And then came the sentimental story of this woman who was picked up from where she was engaged in manual labor and then made to act in a film which the Nayars of Trivandrum didn't like. So they tore the screen and attacked her, and she ran away and was saved by an upper caste lorry driver and spent her life hidden as an upper caste woman. In fact, in documentaries like the one we just saw that try to visualize Rosie's history, you can see her change to the Tamil Brahmin Mami in an Agraharam setting, applying kolam outside a Tamil Brahmin house like a good Brahmin woman. What such a casteist narrative leaves unsaid is the fact that it is also widely said that Rosie was an active member of a drama troupe, which we also saw, even before she came in to play the heroine in Daniel's film. Rosie had already acted in the lower caste art form called Kakarashi, practiced mostly by Dalits and other untouchable castes. This was a dance drama based on mythology, and it usually had men playing women's role. It was from this phase where she had already been one of the first women to play women parts that Rosie came onto Daniel's film. However, none of these facts come into the history of Rosie in its public and popular reception and the memory that is created out of it. Even if documentaries and more serious pieces will tell us about this history, the mainstream cannot still write out a history of Rosie which will try to show her as someone who braved the strict limits of her location and tried to enter a field monopolized by men. Thus, our popular newspapers columns will never say, Kakarashi Nadagalil Telangiya Rosie Adi Cinemele Nayaga. Rosie, who's shown as a Kakarashi artist, is the first film heroine. We will not even say Kakarashi Nadagalil Telangiya Pulli Vilpanekari Rosie Adi Nayaga. The grass seller Rosie, who's shown as a Kakarashi artist, is the first film or hero. We will just say the grass seller Rosie. Thus, we will reduce the Dalit woman to a labouring body and see her only in those confines after denying her any sort of status outside it, all of which will help the non-Dalit to establish their own intellectual and social superiority. So, as Rupesh Kumar says, if the Nayar landlords attacked Rosie for daring to be a Nayar woman on screen and thereby prohibited her public experience and made her disappear from history, we also are repeating the same thing though in a different way. We refuse to grant a fully developed subjectivity and reduce her to be a passive object that then J.C. Daniel picks up and transforms into an actress. In doing this, we also make Rosie disappear as a person and put in her place a lifeless victim on whom we can spend our sympathies. And this is what is really happening now. In other words, on encountering the invaluable history that Dalit male scholarship has revealed for the mainstream refuses to acknowledge its true meaning. Instead, it behaves just like the Nayar landlords and pushes away the breathing, living woman and installs in her place a lifeless victim on whom it can shower its sympathies so as to establish both its progressive and superior status. The second thing I want to say is that there is also often an attempt to forget the whole caste issue surrounding Rosie and to make it out into an issue of gender and of a woman who questioned the Sadacharam or morality of her times, forgetting that she was persecuted only because she was a Dalit woman in a Nayar woman's role, that a mere 4 years later, in the film Martanda Varma, upper caste women acted various kinds of scenes without any Sadacharam problem coming there. One often encounters this kind of a perspective in discussions and in many online writings and other popular journalistic print journalism, where you see many male writers weeping for a Rosie who break the female morality code of Sadacharam and thereby angered the upper caste people. In short, today, when we are remembering her, let us also remember that only a very few people have have worked on her history. Many of them have been Dalit men who went out of their way to give both Rosie and J.C. Daniel a place in Malayalam cinema history. Their work has not been carried forward within university spaces from the Dalit Bahujan perspective, and so far there has been no Dalit Christian or Dalit woman's engagement with this history, and even if there were, and if any, it is not well known. So before we say or do anything, we need to retrieve or evade this history and in the meanwhile facilitate it as much as we can before we come to any conclusions about Rosie or try to establish our own non-Dalit conclusions about her as the truth. The truth can never be established as post-structuralists will remind us, but at least let us remember this post-structuralist truth when we are trying to manufacture and establish our own truths about Rosie. This comment is specifically addressed to the upper caste women of Kerala who are and will be studying Rosie and other Dalit, Adivasi, lower caste and Muslim women with the force and hegemony of their own upper caste institution, theories and concern. This is a call for them to wake up and do some kind of introspection and study themselves and interrogate their own frameworks even as they are studying P.K. Rosie, instead of pretending constructing all non-upper caste attempts towards it with their latest post-structuralist theories. This alone, I think, would do justice to P.K. Rosie's pioneering and original spirit, which was cruelly thwarted and prevented from entering Kerala mainstream. Having said all this, let me move on to the main question around which I have organized this talk. Can a Dalit woman play a Nayak in Malayalam cinema today? In trying to answer this question, one needs to make clear something that upper caste film viewers, intellectuals and post-colonial and neo-Marxian academicians studying cinema have systematically failed to tell us. Malayalam cinema, like all other Indian cinemas, is not a foreign technology that came in from the West, forcing us to deal with it from within our own given post-colonial or pre-capitalist cultural complexities as they tell us. In contrast, Malayalam cinema was a Western technology that was seized and used by the powerful Shudra upper caste community of Kerala, mainly the Nayars, who had to rise out of their Shudra status and gain hegemony in the Kerala region, for which they captured all modern categories and institutions like literature, cinema, etc. In fact, Malayalam cinema has been one of the foremost vehicles for establishing the Shudra community at the center of Kerala modernity. Cinema being one of the most powerful modern technologies that mirror the modern self in darkened halls, became that mirror in which the Nayars imagined themselves as both modern and Malayali. With the loosening of religious and caste sanctions and regulations, cinema then became that new social legislature, the new Manu of the modern era, providing legitimacy and power to the rising upper caste Nayar community for reproducing everything that is legitimate in the light of their own image. Thus, from the time of Martanda Varma, they systematically mirrored themselves on screen and made Kerala mirror them in their food, dress, looks, and artistic and intellectual pursuit. Thanks to Malayalam cinema, to be secular, to be good, to be a citizen, to be creative, to be intelligent, to be meritorious, to be modern, and to even be a human being is to be a Nayar man or woman. It is no wonder then that the Dalit female body of Rosie aroused such hatred and anger in the Nayar landlords. They knew she was pretending to be a Nayar, but even then they knew that her was a body that they had strictly forbidden any kind of entry or space in the public sphere. She was standing there instead of the Nayar woman that the landlords could not bear to see on screen, but demanding a legitimacy that they could not even grant to Dalit men. The mirror that was to reflect their modern self was sending back the image of the Dalit woman that they never acknowledged even in real life except to exploit and use sexually. They knew that if they did not break this mirror, they would allow the entry of the Dalit woman into the public sphere of Kerala. It is no wonder that the Nayar men tore the screen in anger. Thus the mirror that mirrored the wrong image was broken and the Dalit body of Rosie was banished from Malayalam film history and public sphere forever. And we would not have known anything about her if Dalit male scholarship did not step in and prevent its total erasure. Thus, we now know that a courageous and talented Rosie lived and acted even though she was eventually defeated. After her defeat, the Malayalam screen filled up with upper caste women and personas played out by upper caste and Brahmin and Syrian Christian women. In the beginning, Tamil actresses were imported to play out these Nayar women personas. Then came the Syrian Christians like Miss Kumari and later Sheila. After this, we got the Telugu Rao woman Sharada and eventually our own very upper caste Kalamandalam trained Jayabharati and later the Nambyar woman Seema. After Seema's entry, the Malayalam screen has been strictly monopolized by various Nayar and upper caste women like Shobana, Kartika, Parvati. And in the last few decades, many actresses have even started using their upper caste names also along with their names, and thus we have Manju Varir, Samrita Verma, Navya Nair, Priya Pillai, Nitya Menon, Kartika Nair, and many others, all of whom play many roles as Dalit, OBC, and even Muslim women, but with their caste names loudly proclaiming who and what they are. In this kind of highly casteist scenario of representing women in Malayalam cinema, it is not surprising that to this day we have not had a single Dalit actress from within Kerala who has risen to be an important star in Malayalam cinema. If among the plethora of heroines that we have had in the last few decades of Malayalam cinema, one of them is indeed a Dalit woman, this has not been made public knowledge. One says this because it is well known that Dalits survive in the film industry by hiding their caste identities, just as OBCs and Muslims pretend to be upper caste. So after Rosie, no Dalit woman has played the part of any heroine, let alone a Nair woman on the Malayalam screen. If Rosie as a Dalit Christian woman was persecuted for playing a Nair woman's role, today we do not even reach to that level. All Dalit female bodies are totally erased from the mainstream of Malayalam cinema, even before they come into a prominent position. Even if at all they get in, they remain in marginalized roles as comedians, extras and junior artists and in such minor positions. In fact, the screen body of the heroine has remained a monopoly of Nair and Syrian Christian women for more than half a century now. It was only in the last 10 years that even Hindu OBC actresses have come in. Often, like in the case of Kamya Madhavan, who is a Charya belonging to a richly higher OBC community, they have been more Nair looking than Nair women going by cinematic standards. It is shocking and surprising that Nirava women actresses like Samrita Sunil, with their perfect Nair looks, even have been systematically given lesser roles and very few male characters. In one of the films that made her famous, Chocolate, she played the role of a Nirava woman as the daughter of the entirely comical and Kose Babulayan, who is shown as a businessman and a thug. Until the end of the film, suspicions are cast about her character. A similar fate is given to Reema Kalingal, who is again not an upper caste woman, and some say is actually half Dalit and half Irava. She also gets to play many lower caste Christian and characters, and is famous outside the screen for drinking her open views on sexuality. And within the screen niche, she never gets to play the pure virginal roles that always await Nair women. Similarly, though there has been few Muslim women like Nadia Moidu and Surega of the Tagara fame, we do not have a female Muslim star or persona who stands for the Muslim female location. Most of the Muslim women characters we see today are also played by non-Muslims, and as in the latest hit Tattathil Marayathu, there is a deliberate attempt to bring in North Indian actresses to play Muslim women who are projected as extremely beautiful, exotic and out of the world. Also, constantly Muslim women are written down as heroines only in roles that see them abandoning their Muslimness and merging into a liberal and upper caste gendered way of being. In short, with this Rosie Memorial Lecture, we need to clearly remember this, that along with the life and courage and determination and eventual defeat and survival of P.K. Rosie, we are all part of a film industry which does not have a single actress who has represented a Dalit or Muslim or even non-upper caste female body or persona in Malayalam cinema to compete with or stand alongside a Nair persona without which a Malayalam film cannot even function. Now we have to read this alongside two important issues. One is the fact that Malayalam cinema constantly shows the Nair female location as the ideal location and tries to portray it as inherently pure, virginal and angelic, with most Nair women characters adhering to all codes of moral conduct, both sexual and social. In contrast, when the focus is on the representations of Dalit women, like the role of the Dalit in Kalli Chellama, or the OBC woman in Anubhavangal Padichaggal, or the Muslim woman in Kuti Kupayam, and the fisher woman in Chemmi, all of which was done by Sheila, the Syrian Christian actress, We can see all these bodies and personas marked by a sexuality which breaks all the given moral codes of the caste society. Thus, most of these non-upper caste women have relationships outside marriage, before marriage, and none of them are granted the sexual purity which is an inherent quality of the Nayar woman. As a result of this, just like Rosie was accused of not adhering to the morals of the land and attacked, the film narrative either kills or maims or breaks the families and hearts of these women. The biggest example here is of Karuthama in Chemmi, the fair woman played by Cyril Christian Sheila, who till the end of the film keeps on breaking all codes of caste morality and ends up dead on the beach in the arms of her illicit lover. One can fill up an entire book with the names of such sexually loose women who turn up only in Dalit, Bahujan, Adivasi and Muslim location in the Malayalam script. Even in all the new generation films like Female 22, Traffic, Chapa Kudishu, Diamond Necklace, Unnamed Rasurum, we see the same story repeating. Moreover, many of them are about women of different locations and all their bodies are played out by extremely fair, extremely tall women who in no way represent the woman they are trying to represent. This is most visible in the case of Anna in Unnamed Rasurum. Just watch the film to see how the central character of the sales girl is played by a woman who could be selected for a beauty pageant, given her height and model-like features, and is constantly shown against the dark, thin figures of real sales girls who neither have names or voices in the film. In short, even as we are sitting here looking into a distant past of violence through P.K. Rosie, trying to understand what happened then and trying to make theories out of it, that past is here, right before us, in our presence, and on the Malayali cinema screen and culture. We still have not been able to produce a cinema which can accommodate a female persona, real or represented, outside the Samarna limits of the Nayar woman. Even when we give space to Dalit, OBC and Adivasi and Muslim women, we either create them as the other of the Nayar upper caste woman or pull her to mimic the upper caste persona, which is today the only valid woman persona in Malayalam cinema and culture. It is in this context that the representational aesthetics of a film like Pablo Picasso becomes important in spite of all its other problems. It is one of those rare films that was able to give us a Dalit woman persona which largely escaped these hegemonic caste aesthetics. However, we all know how this film was banned, how it did not even make into the mainstream market. In fact, if once they tore the screen and prevented the cinematic career of a Dalit woman, today also they are continuing to do this in new ways by preventing any kind of significant representational space to Dalit women. All other non-upper caste women are also denied space and are reduced to seductive others or made to perform sad mimicry. So when we are seriously thinking of P.K. Rosie and what she signified, and when everyone is talking of the violence that was meted out to Rosie, I think we need to commemorate Rosie by doing full justice to her memory and life and her work. For this, we need to recognize, study and analyze not only her presence in our past, but also right here in our present. We need to see that the screens that they tore away and the women that they banished are repeating even now, although in a most discreet and unseen manner. We have to accept that we are living in a highly casteist film culture which is denying even representational space to Dalit women, refusing to portray them, portraying them as hypersexual and delegitimizing them while working to uphold the power and caste status of upper caste communities. We need to see that this is the same fate that is accorded to Adivasi, lower caste and Muslim and other marginalized women in Malayalam cinema. This is not to beg for representation space in a casteist film industry, but this is to expose it and question it and resist it, and also to begin thinking about how these representational strategies are hugely responsible for the extremely marginalized status of Dalit and Adivasi women in Kerala, and similarly for the social exclusion and exploitation that most OBC women and Muslim women face today in Kerala society.